You know what? It's Tuesday. This is Trekland, and we're live, obviously. So welcome to Trekland Tuesdays Live. Hey, it's the home for clarity, sanity, and your big picture and everything Star Trek. Live every week. Be with us again. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Today, they don't hide their Star Trek anymore. Yeah. I'm going to get to that in just a second with a reminder that actually, check your calendars, it's the Trekland third Tuesday of the month. That means we'll have a 24-hour flash deal here for Trekland in a little bit. Got everybody coming into the chat. And I also want to thank all of our Patreon folks. Whoa. Going to get to that in a little bit also. But thanks once again, everybody, for everybody in the TTL Club and for our live wires. Trekland Tuesdays live. Okay. Thanks much, guys. And hey, if you are new and you've stumbled into this, I'm usually more on the ball than that. Just looking here at our chat, seeing what all's going on, and everybody that's here. Never had that happen. Usually you have to bang the dang thing 2 or 3 times before you get somebody to look at you. But hey, if you're new, jump in. We will have chat going all the time. You can talk to everybody. I'm going to get to the chat directly after the break. For right now, I've got a little soapbox to jump on. And then after the break, we'll get to the Parrot Analytics TV streaming ratings, as well as our chat here, and exactly what that 24-hour flash deal is for this month from Trekland, okay? But I'm so glad to see everybody. Hope everybody is doing well. It's 2020. That could be a myriad of things. If you're just being assaulted by the wildfires in the West or otherwise, if you're just being assaulted by 2020 and all the insanity of this year, the injustice of this year, the intelligence assault of this year, I empathize with you. But hang in here for a little bit. We'll have a little respite. Hey, here's what I'm getting at. We talked about this last week. Once again, thanks everybody for jumping with me to Mondays last week to get out of the way of Star Trek Day. Very glad I did, because of all the panels that were around during the day, and they're all available to watch and rewatch and read the commentary on, and all of my brethren's different assorted websites. It was the Star Trek. It was the Strange New Worlds panel, which actually was like finishing right now. That I was the most curious to see up front, and the one that I was the most struck by, for this reason. And I tweeted about this, or I actually Instagram storied about this. By the time it was wrapped up, they had almost as many writers. Well, they did have as many writers as they did actors in the show. Part of that's because some of the actors, but they're not revealing everybody. But they had Akiva Goldsman and Henry Alonzo Miles, and the rest, a couple more of the writing crew. And they all, at the end, were asked by Mika Burton, LeVar's daughter, who did an absolutely wonderful job of hosting these panels. These are official CBS panels. And they were all for the new shows, so they weren't just more of the same virtual panels, which have been wonderful this year. But these were, if anybody was going to drop a spoiler, it would be these panels. And not so much that, but it was the writers that stole the show here because, they all went verklempt. It was so awesome. They all talked about, I think, how they had all been fans themselves and how they had to stop and take them. And I know it's the kind of thing you hear everybody, all the actors, all the creatives. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm working on a Star Trek. As well they should. But they really got a combination of teary-eyed and choked up and laughing at themselves being teary-eyed and choked up. And if you didn't see it live, or if you haven't seen a replay of it yet, I suggest you go over and see it. It's fun to see this. It's the most distant and unknown of the new series to come. I mean, there was nothing on 31. There was nothing on Prodigy. They're still too far distant. And COVID interrupted. So Strange New Worlds, yes, was the most distant, and we haven't seen stills. We feel like we've got a season's pilot, though, watching Ensign Mount play Pike all year long. And I've talked here recently how it's funny how they've made headlines. Alex has made headlines talking about how Strange New Worlds is going to be more episodic and more TOS style optimistic, and not as dystopian as some of the other modern shows have been that fit the modern trope of TV telling. I'd like to think by popular demand, but then the whole series is by popular demand. If there's any of the Kurtzman shows that are going to feel like it's good old Star Trek fan-owned, at least fan-demanded, it's this one. So that raises the stakes on a lot of pressure for a lot of folks. And on one hand, you feel like, well, it's had a tryout. We've seen Anson and Rebecca Romaine and Ethan Peck trying out, to great effect, Pike and Spock in number one. Who will play Dr. Sorry to say Dr. Hoyt, John Hoyt's role. Who will play Dr. Boyce? Any of the other ones? We saw some background bridge folks. We saw Yeoman Colt as an alien at a non-human. That'll be interesting. But yeah. The interesting thing was the writers hearing them talk about their Kayla Peters. And all of them talking about that. What it got my mind to thinking was, here the show hasn't even aired yet. And on one hand, yeah, maybe it's very savvy beta marketing. Although I would like to think, aside from Mika's question about what does being on the show mean to you, which is pretty broad-based, open, I would like to think it wasn't, meta CBS planning, that it was just really a spontaneous moment that opened up where everybody went so verklempt. But what it made me mindful is how we truly are in a new era. How, once again, it's a sign that the geeks really did win. Not just Star Trek, but the culture. Our culture. What I mean is there was a time, didn't exist in the original series because it was a moot point. No one knew what Star Trek fandom was. It wasn't a thing in the original series, except in the most basic TV, we're writing fan letters and the Nielsen ratings. It wasn't until the 70s and the 80s and part of the groundswell that brought back the motion picture and the movie series, much less Next Generation. Especially with the Next Generation. When Gene got things launched and then pretty much had turned the keys over to a whole new army of folks. Rick Berman's army. The production side as much as the writing side. But you talked to a lot of people at the time. You had to be very savvy. Of course, every Star Trek fan wants to work on a Star Trek. But in 1986 and 1987 and 88 and 89 and 90 and 91 and 90, all the way up, really Enterprise, there were certain vibes, there were certain aspects and certain niches of the show. Now, this doesn't so much work with actors, but even with, at times, writers early on, and then after that, the entire rest of the crew. There were years when, if you were a huge Star Trek fan, you kept it to yourself, at least while you were being hired. Whether that was a casting audition process or interviews or you were throwing in your resume, there was a time when you did not let it be known around the halls of Paramount that you were a fan because, number one, if you were on the stages, you were suspected of how much are you going to leak? How much are you going to leak textually, verbally? How much are you going to swipe? How many fan friends are you going to let on the sets, on the stages, after hours, on the weekends? And then come Monday morning, there's a couple of phasers missing. That was a very real thing. And it was basically a case of you did not let that be known widely because it was a sense of what you might do, especially until you had been vetted by experience, until you had gone through the battle trenches. And believe me, guys, with 16-hour days, 20-hour days, Fridays especially, 26 episodes a year. There were some trenches to be battle mates through, okay? But until you had gone through that vetting process of experience and trust, you did not let that out if you were over on the stages or in the trenches of the Cooper building. Even the writers, and here's where it flows that way. There's a feeling in some quarters of old Hollywood, of pre-geekified Hollywood, I should say, that if you were that big a Trek fan, you were probably more on the inexperienced side of writing or some of the other major guild type aspects, okay? If you were that big a Star Trek fan, you were probably not as professional in your field as you could be. Now, some of this is about timing and dating, and that's where things are. And even over the 18 years of the Berman era, you saw that radically change. By the end of Voyager, and especially by Enterprise, you could wear your fandom on your badge as a support. In fact, by the end, it was a sought for. Oh, look, let's go get, let's go get known fans that we know of. Okay. Let's go get Judith and Gar, Reeve Stevens, known novelists who are trying to cross over into screenwriting at that time. The pages had flipped. Okay. I'm talking about the early years. Lots of, friends that I've met since kept it a secret. And even when their fandom eked out, when it leaked out, they became suspect. When something did go wrong, when something was missing, especially physically. What's amazing to me is the people on stage, on the lot, would be suspected of things sometimes because, something was leaked or something got out. Somebody said something at a convention this weekend. This is all pre-internet, guys. Somebody said something at oh my God, if it got back, if somebody wrote a letter, there was a phone call on Monday morning or Tuesday morning, somebody more than once could be called on the carpet about it. What people didn't realize is all the vendors that Star Trek had who were not, they didn't have the threat of a job. We didn't have NDAs in those days. Well, there were, but not for something as frivolous as a TV show. But no one would stop to think about all the vendors, all the off-lot vendors that made props, that did visual effects, did, even sewing. But people that manufactured things for the series, if they got memos, if they got even a few pages, people who were not beholden to Paramount or Star Trek or Rick Berman or any way they could be punished, other than maybe then their company would never get a job. They'd never get a contract after that. But if somebody was a fan and worked somewhere around in Hollywood, especially in the genre-related, bits like visual effects or props or set construction, special pieces, like mechanical effects, if they didn't have the sword of Damocles hanging over them about losing a job or being fired, being banned from the lot, it was a big turn on. It was a big ego boo to be a leaker. And of course, it was slow motion leaking. Might turn up in the next issue of some newsletter or some fanzine somewhere, or be a rumor mill that started at some convention somewhere. But yeah, that was the attitude. That was you hid your fandom for the most part until you were yourself vetted. If there was a time when your fandom had to be out there, obviously, Mike, Rick, Sternbach, Mike Arkuda, they're kind of putting it out there. That's kind of what the job entails. In that case, it might even be how much of a percentage, how deep is your fandom going. And if you're acquainted and you're adequate and you have other similar interests, oh, look, I'm an across-the-board sci-fi fantasy artist or graphic artist or what have you. I've written sci-fi in other genres. Okay. In that case, maybe it's a case of keeping your depth. Can you recite not just episode titles, but can you recite writers? Can you recite the 5 different names that a certain prop was known by in the original series? Yeah. So yes, and again, it's a vibe that changed, obviously, by the end of Enterprise. You had fanboys running the show, and fangirls. By the time Enterprise was done with Manny and Mike Sussman and Phyllis Strong and Gar and Judy. Yes, I know. But then things get reinvented. And then the geeks won the world anyway, and now nobody cares because everything is driven by Marvel. And Star Wars. And of course, that's kind of bumped up the top of the hopeful resume list. You still have to prove yourself in whatever field you're in professionally, whether it's writing, whether it's whatever it is. Prop design, makeup design. Hiring animals, which is actually in the prop master's purview, believe it or not. That's how we wound up with 2 spots. 2 different prop masters at 2 different times in the series they're going at it. When Joe Longo was still alternating weekly, the original spot was his. So there's an attempt to match, but only so much. And if you can't find the Polaroids, oh well, in the moment. So anyway, if you didn't, I urge you, kudos to a fabulous job. War makes such a big deal about it. That was historical. I tried to set it up that way. It was an historical Star Trek day. Hope you had a good one. Hope you had a fun one. Hope you found a way to celebrate even amongst the other days going by. There's still plenty more events going on. Phantom Con season may be over, but there's still plenty of events coming up. I'll have a couple of them. But if you didn't see all the panels, I would suggest you go back and catch them, because there's at least one moment in all of them where the unexpected happens, which is great, which you would hope for in any panel. But these being CBS, there'll be the authorized, leaks, the authorized news announcement. But that was one moment when I have to think it wasn't scripted, it was genuine, and it just makes me even more excited. As I socialized that day, even more excited than you could be for Strange New Worlds. So good on Davey Perez and Akela and Akiva, old man Akiva Goldsman. I say that lovingly. And Henry Alonzo Myers, and those actors too. Yeah, sure. It was the most writer-heavy of all the panels, too, which I thought was interesting, and I'm glad they did it. I'm really glad they did it. Anybody that sees it has to be even more excited about that show. Okay. Guys, we're going to take a break here in a second. We'll come back. I'm going to look at all the chat. We will catch you up. Hey, Twitch, I didn't address you directly, but we will get back to everything now. It's not a live stream, Twitchers. I'm sorry. We wait for a while here, but we'll get there. Meanwhile, I just do want to say, I want to mention while we've got the moment here, for 24 hours, okay, I've brought it back. Our third Tuesday offer this week is real simple. It's the simple 3 for 2. Buy 3 months, get 2 in Portal 47. It's been an interesting year. The world has caught up to what virtual programming is. 5 years ago, we pioneered it with Portal. As far as the fun side, not the boring meeting side. Go to LarryNemecek.com. There's a button right there. It's /simple342. But go there. 24 hours. So this time tomorrow, 2 p.m. Pacific, it ends. Okay? Jump in with us. It's a free month for the price of 2-ish. We've got a lot of Portales on today. They'll tell you. A lot of features. You can go to portal47.net, check out the features. I'm going to leave it there. Okay? Either you're ready for the portal or you're not. But hey, I did want to tell you about a couple of special things before we took our break. Breaking news. I'm so thrilled to talk about this. A lot of you that go back and watch Trekland videos, or you've been around Trekland for a while, know that I'm a big booster of the improvised generation. The TNG era narrative improv. Yes, I said narrative improv. People are playing characters in episodes, but they're 1-hour episodes that are completely improvised off the improvised word. When they're live, we have special effects, sound effects. It's a black box, but it's so awesome live. But they have live stream. Well, this year they're making an effort to go all virtual. So this year the season is kicking off September 27th, Sunday afternoon Pacific time, with a virtual cocktail party. Wow, there's a shine. There we go. I'm really thrilled to be co-hosting it with with Eliza Pearl. She is wonderful actress. She's a member of the cast. She plays the captain. And we're going to be close. A lot of folks are going to be there. I don't know if we're announcing the guest list yet, but certain lead Ferengi is going to be there talking about his book. We're going to have a lot of guests. Just watch for the news coming out. I'll have it. It'll be all over. Woo! Party time. Anyway, that's hard to read, isn't it? There we go. It's 9:36 Pacific, so that'll be 6 to 9 Eastern. Okay, if you're a late bird, guys, in Europe, you might even catch it at midnight or 1 a.m. Okay, 3 hours, cocktail party, not panels, cocktail party style, talk show style. We'll have 10, 15 minutes with folks, a couple of group cocktail conversations, but it'll be fun. Okay, coming up at the end of the month, a little variety to go on there. Also want to mention that it's the season finale this week for the Trek Files. End of our 5th season. We've got Rod back talking about his mom, talking about his dad, all through the guise of Magel's thank you notes to everyone who spoke at Gene's memorial service. Kind of interesting and a great way to end the 5th season of the Trek Files. Thanks to all of our Trekophiles spelled with an F who have been supporting us over on the Roddenberry Network. It's right on Facebook. The only podcast that gives you paperwork. Not really. The documents we talk about are there every week, and they're there forever. It's a great resource. So I urge you to check it out, and the other great Roddenberry podcasts, too, while you're there. I mean, Mission Log and Women at Warp and Daily Star Trek News and Shabam and even Priority One. And, of course, every Saturday, Dr. Ali and Dr. Trek, one of us is a real doctor, are at Life Support Live at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, all the way around the clock, early enough for Europe to get in. We go boldly through uncertain times, a theme each week. Right now, we're launching off of Lower Decks. No spoilers, but we're taking the theme and then looking at all of Star Trek. We have a lot of fun. We geek out plenty and hopefully send you away with some thoughts for daily life, too, guys. Okay? Join the Facebook group, too. You get to take part and post and be part of the community, too. All on Facebook-based, but we are on YouTube and Facebook when we go live, and Twitch too. Where you're watching me right now is where we are live. Most of all, guys, if you are leaving us right now at the break for the YouTube break, hey, where you are on YouTube, that's my Twitter, just at Larry Nemecek. Here on Facebook, it's the same. On Instagram, Larry Nemecek's Trekland. And if you are interested in Portal47.net and want to read more, check it out, Portal47.net. It's like a mini-con all year long with all the features. If you want to join, don't hit the join button there. Hit the special button for the 24-hour, this month's third Tuesday special. Okay? Hey, everybody, I really want to thank you if you're leaving us right now, if you're on YouTube, watching later. Otherwise, if you're live, stick with us. I'll be right back after the break, okay? But as always, out there this year and always, stay healthy, guys. Stay woke. Check your sources. Most of all, trek well, everybody.